just thinking about the fighter pilots, he was also thinking about these people working on the codes in Bletchley Park. So that's accomplishment number 2. By the way, an IT worker in the 1990s in Britain joked that if it wasn't for Alan Turing, he'd probably either be out of a job or working for the Nazis. So then, subsequent to the war, after the war, Turing went back to civilian life and he worked as a professor at Manchester University. And he became interested in the subject of artificial intelligence, which is coming around to our story here. And in 1950, he published a paper in the journal Mind called Computing Machinery and Intelligence, where he proposed a famous test for artificial intelligence, which is now known as the Turing test. And basically, whole conferences, whole academic conferences, and whole books written by academics are devoted to the subject of what Turing meant by the Turing test. In fact, I've got one right here, Parsing the Turing Test, which is a collection of essays about the Turing test. But the simple idea, the simple version of it is, if you think of something like a modern-day online chat session or texting on your phone, let's say, and if you're having a conversation with someone through this text-based medium, where all you can do is send text messages, no voice, no pictures, and have a conversation with someone, suppose after about 10 minutes or so of conversation, you're surprised to find out that the person you're chatting with is not actually a person, but a computer program simulating a person. That, Turing said, is the definitive test for intelligence. If a computer program can have that type of online chat and deceive someone for a period of time, the machine should be considered intelligent. He was trying to think of a test that would kind of remove all of the extraneous factors about human intelligence and come up with something that would measure intelligence as a thing by itself. And it's really interesting because in the original paper, which is reproduced in this book, it's called Computing Machinery and Intelligence, Turing actually talks about 2 different versions of this test. The first one is actually a gender-based experiment, where he said, okay, imagine that I have these 2 teletypes. One of them is connected to a man, and the other one is connected to a woman. And now a judge comes in and tries to decide which one is connected to the man and which one is connected to the woman. The judge is allowed to pose any question or make any statement through either terminal to the man or woman at the other end. But of course the judge doesn't know in advance which one is the man and which one's the woman. So the judge's job is to decide after 5 minutes of interrogation which terminal is the man and which is the woman. And in Turing's original paper written in 1950, certain cultural assumptions which don't hold now, like he would say, the interrogator can ask, do you have long hair? Or are you wearing a dress? But the trick was, he said, the woman should always tell the truth and the man should always lie. So if the man is asked, are you wearing a dress? In fact, if the man is asked, are you a woman? He should say, yes, I'm the woman. But Turing said, even if the man is allowed to lie in this scenario, the judge should be savvy enough to pick up the signals and decide a certain percentage of the time, let's say maybe 75% of the time, he's able to identify the woman correctly. And actually this is very prescient because this sort of thing is what happens nowadays in real live online chat. You have women who generally tell the truth and men who generally present company excluded. So then Turing goes on later in the paper to talk about the other version of the Turing test, which is just identifying a man versus a machine, or a person versus a machine in this experiment. However, the gender-based experiment is actually, some people say, a better experiment, because if you think about the test of comparing a person and a computer, well, what's the test? Is it that after 5 minutes of interrogation, the judge should be fooled 50% of the time, or the judge should be fooled 100% of the time? Should the computer be so good that it passes as a human more often than a human does? So there's really no basis for making an accurate scientific experiment given the human-machine test. But the gender test is more interesting because, like I said, if we did this experiment, if we got 50 men and 50 women and 50 judges and ran this experiment, we would be able to find out a certain percentage of the time how often the judge misidentifies the woman. Now, if we replace the lying man in the game with a computer, if the computer program is a really terrible artificial intelligence that can't chat very well at all, well, then the woman can be identified correctly 100% of the time. But as the computer becomes better and better at simulating the lying man in the game, that percentage gets closer and closer to the 75% that we measured with the actual people in the scenario. So in a way, the gender-based Turing test is a better test than the test for just comparing humans and machines. When I was an engineer in school and first learned about the Turing test, they didn't say anything about this gender-based experiment. In fact, it was only sometime later that much to my surprise when I read Turing's paper, that I learned that he was interested in this gender experiment. The story of Alan Turing ends tragically, however. He was gay, and in 1952 he was arrested for homosexuality, sodomy, lewd acts, I guess it was called at that time in Britain. And his conviction his punishment involved chemical castration, which was estrogen injections. And he grew dress and became very depressed and committed suicide in 1953. That's a very tragic story. But as Doug mentioned, in fact, I'm very pleased to be here today because just yesterday, after 50 years, Gordon Brown, Prime Minister of the UK, issued a formal apology to Turing. So the story. So now I've talked about why Alan Turing is on one side of the medal, and now I'm going to fast forward a little bit to 1966 and talk about Joseph Weizenbaum. Joseph Weizenbaum is what I would call the first botmaster. Botmaster is the term we use for the person who creates an artificial intelligence chatbot, and they're sort of the author of the bot, the person responsible for training it. So at the time Turing wrote his paper in 1950, it wasn't really possible to even try to create a computer program that would have these kinds of conversations. But by the 1960s, computers were getting a little more sophisticated. So Joseph Weizenbaum was a professor at MIT, in the computer science lab there. And he had a fascinating story. He had a colleague who was playing around with a computer one day, and the colleague said, "Come on to my office, Joe, I want to show you this program." And Joe said, "What is it?" And he said, "Well, you can ask this program any question, any yes or no question, and it will answer the question for you." So, Weizenbaum sat down and typed in a simple question like, "Is my name Joseph?" And the program answered yes. And he tried another question like, "Is today Wednesday?" And the program answered yes. And then he tried a third question, and the program answered yes. Well, then, of course, his colleague revealed to him that this was all just an illusion because he was getting the yes answers just by chance. Because the way the program worked was simply to count up the number of letters in the question, and if the number of letters was odd, it would print yes, and if it was even, it would print no. So Weizenbaum got lucky with his three questions. But it inspired him to go off and create another program called ELIZA, or the Doctor program. And ELIZA is a very simple natural language program which could respond to a very limited number of patterns. But even with its limitations, it could create the illusion of having a fairly sophisticated conversation. I don't have the slide, but I thought I would just read to you briefly